I like to talk a lot. You guys can figure that out by now. I talk a lot of times with so many words, 1,000 words a day with content and whatnot. There's one word that always sticks to me, that is grateful. I'm always grateful to do stuff like this, to podcast, make some YouTube videos, some TikToks. I'm grateful for everything. I'm grateful for the life I have. I'm all about spreading positivity because, the world can be a cruel place at times, but there's always some nice to have some positivity here and there. That's what the people at Grateful Apparel are all about. Grateful Apparel, it's always been about you, the change, the fighter, the one who refuses to settle with the cards you were dealt with, the uplifter, the passion chaser, the one who knows that hitting rock bottom just means you're about to shoot to the top. Their brand is focusing on positivity and changing moods around the world, and I cannot agree with them more. The message is great, and their clothes are also really great. Got a lot of different shirts, hats, and hoodies. I got a couple of shirts. I'm wearing one right now. I got the hat here. Really, really good stuff. I like the shirts. Has like a vintage look to it, and the graphics are really cool. They're always changing it, always having some new stuff drop. The merch is really, really good. I love their message, and I love their clothes, and you're going to love them too if you head over to gratefulapparel.com right now. Use code FONZ, F-O-N-Z, for 15% off your order. Get yourself a new shirt, a hat, whatever you want to do at Grateful Apparel. They got really good stuff over there and a really good message. You want to support their brand. Good pricing there, and you'll get even better price if you use my code, like I said, FONZ, FONZ, for 15% off your order. gratefulapparel.com. Head over there right now. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the YouTube channel. As I, Fonz the Falcon, thank you so much for taking just a few short minutes of your day to watch this video here. Yes, and this week's video we got another Fonz's Top 10. If you're unaware, with Fonz's Top 10, it's simple. My channel, Fonz the Falco, I do some top 10s here. A new series on this channel, could be about anything, sports, wrestling, anything about life. And here we are again with another wrestling themed top 10. Now, last week I did the best WWE draft picks of all time in my personal opinion. If you want to check it out, the link is down below. And since I did the best WWE draft picks, I figured this week why not do the 10 worst WWE draft picks. But we already know what the WWE draft and WWE in general, it's scripted, whatever, you know how it is. But still, WWE draft picks, there were some good ones, but there were a lot of bad ones. With the case of the draft, you want to draft over to a new brand to get a new refreshed character, new storyline, maybe some championship pursuits. But this list here, these worst ones, just did not pan out exactly. And this is just very, very simple. It's just the worst draft picks, the ones that just did not pan out at all, and some that were head scratchers, and ones that just didn't make sense at all. But with that, it's very simple. Let's get right into the video. Here it is, Fonz's top 10 of the worst WWE draft picks of all time, in my personal opinion. Number 10, Lars Sullivan to SmackDown in 2019. The character of Lars Sullivan in NXT worked really well, and he actually had a nice little run in NXT, and the future was somewhat bright for him. Vince McMahon was just in love with the character, a big-bodied, bruising heel that didn't really talk a lot, just went in the ring, destroyed everybody, and left. And after his run in NXT, he was called up to the main roster in 2019 as a pending free agent, going from Raw and SmackDown with a bunch of other superstars at the time. And in 2019, during the WWE Superstar Shakeup, he wasn't originally in the draft pool, was sent to SmackDown in the post-supplemental draft picks. And during that time before he was drafted, he was on Raw for a little bit, just terrorizing opponents, but never really had an official match before being sent to SmackDown as part of the draft. And safe to say, his WWE tenure on SmackDown really did not pan out, ended up losing a 3-on-1 handicap match to Lucha House Party in Super Showdown. Then ended up showing up on Raw, taking out the same people in Lucha House Party. Then pretty much in 2020, a severe knee injury put him on the shelf and missed all of 2020. Then he missed the 2020 draft and then showed up again on SmackDown in 2021. And then, as you know, we had some controversy outside the ring, ended up leading to his release. I'm not going to get into all that. If you want to look it up, if you're curious, go right ahead. But for the in-ring wise, it's not the best for a superstar to debut on the main roster, jumping from brand to brand, to not have a single affiliation. And on top of that, really didn't have a huge feud to start off, going up against Lucha House Party, then destroying them again after originally losing to them at a pay-per-view. Combine all that with the controversy he had, he ended up leaving the company and quietly retired from wrestling, and it's safe to say it was a bust of a draft pick with Lars Sullivan. Number 9, Arturo Ruas to Raw in 2020. With the 35th pick in the 7th round of the supplemental draft, the final draft selection, the 2020 draft, Ross selected NXT's own Arturo Ruas. And really, no offense, but nobody knew who Arturo Ruas was. You see, he was on NXT for a little bit, but didn't have any crazy huge matches or any feuds, and honestly was a little bit forgettable. But he did have one match on Raw right before the draft, and it was during the Raw Underground era. Remember that time? And after being drafted, he just never showed up on Raw at all. And Ruas was quickly sent back down to NXT in 2021. And then being back on NXT for a little bit, he ended up being released from the company. And he was in AEW for a little bit under Tiger Ruas, but he didn't last that long in AEW as well. It was one of the more head-scratching picks at the time in 2020, and really when you saw him on the draft pool, you're like, who is this guy? Maybe with a little bit more development in NXT, a little bit more showcasing in matches, maybe he would have had a moment in WWE, but it really didn't start that well was his time at NXT. Number 8, Big Daddy V to SmackDown in 2008. WWE really tried to make Big Daddy V, Viscera, Mabel a thing in WWE for a long time. But with all the really bad gimmicks they gave him, he just never really stood a chance. In the 2008 WWE draft, with the 15th pick in the supplemental draft, SmackDown selected Big Daddy V after his time in ECW. And really, ECW and SmackDown at the time had pretty much both wrestlers swapping brands, so it really wasn't that big of a change, but Big Daddy V was officially on the blue brand. But really, after 2 months in the company, after being drafted to SmackDown, Big Daddy V was released, never having a match at all on that brand. And really, there was just no point at all. It was just another waste of a draft pick. You had somewhat of an idea to bring him to the SmackDown brand, meanwhile he was already on it too. Then to be released, never to have a match as an official member of SmackDown, just a head-scratching move. With more than 20 years experience in WWE, Viscera, Big Daddy V, and Mabel just never really had a chance with the company, really just never clicked with the fans with the gimmicks he was given. Just a case of another draft pick that just never really made sense. Number 7, Paul Heyman and Raw in 2004. This is probably the only time I'm ever gonna have Paul Heyman on these top 10 worst as far as wrestling, because Paul Heyman is great on the mic, has a great wrestling mind, and just overall a great talker, one of the best in the business. And at the time of the 2004 WWE draft, Paul Heyman was actually the general manager of SmackDown, and a great time during that era. But in the 2004 draft, Vince McMahon made it clear that anybody could be drafted. Wrestlers, managers, commentators, and even general managers. But nobody really thought GMs were going to be drafted, non-wrestling personalities were going to be drafted, but that was the case with the final pick, televised pick, in the 2004 draft. Raw GM at the time picked the draft selection, and it would end up being Paul Heyman. And Paul Heyman was just not having that. He immediately quit the company following that selection that night. Now, it was a memorable, funny moment, but overall, this really was a waste of a draft pick. Now, really, this was just more used to write Heyman off TV, but honestly, they could have done it a lot better than make it a wasted draft selection, where they could have used it on an actual superstar with an actual chance to make an impact. And even that, it was also more of a waste of it because Paul Heyman ended up being on SmackDown a few months later. But no, not as a GM, because Kurt Angle was ended up being the SmackDown GM. Paul Heyman was returning as a manager. Still, it made no sense. You wanted to write someone off TV, and I get that, but it could have been a lot better than a wasted draft pick because he ended up being on the SmackDown brand anyway. Let me be clear, Paul Heyman, excellent personality in wrestling, one of my favorites on the mic. Just really the only time he's going to be on a worst top 10 here. Number 6, Alberto Del Rio to SmackDown in 2016. 2016 was the time I fully got back into wrestling after some years away, and let me tell you, WWE was booming in 2016. There was a popularity where there's so many other wrestlers, so many fresh faces, and it was time for a rebrand split. And the 2016 draft was overall really good. A lot of the superstars, even calls from NXT, benefited really well from this draft. But Alberto Del Rio, in the case, was not one of those selections. Drafted in the 6th round, the 29th pick overall, the Mexican aristocrat moved over to the blue brand. And this was after recently coming back to WWE in October 2015 after a run with the League of Nations and being just a punching bag to Roman Reigns. And when the League of Nations ended up disbanding and Del Rio going to SmackDown, he seemingly just lost himself into the shuffle and really never had any moments with SmackDown Live in 2016. He ended up exercising his opt-out clause, and him and WWE mutually agreed to part ways, never to be back in the WWE ring again. And it was just a wasted draft pick because he was drafted and 3 months later, he was out of the company. Are you looking to upgrade your jewelry game? Add some accessories to your outfits? Well, I got you covered. Arichi London is a men's jewelry company based out of London. Let me tell you guys about the product. The products are either silver or gold plated with 18K gold or premium 316L stainless steel. And the finishes for the jewelry are created with anodizing and dipping multiple times to thickly seal and plate the jewelry for maximum and unbeatable durability. You know what that means? It means the product will never rust, tarnish, or turn your skin green. You know what the best part is? All the products are completely waterproof, sweatproof, and heatproof, and they'll never fade, tarnish, or even rust. And the products are waterproof, sweatproof, and heatproof. And that means they'll never fade or tarnish. Another good thing, the products are 100% hyperallergenic, and you can wear any pieces 24/7. You don't have to worry about your skin developing a rash because the product does not contain nickel. And this is good for me, actually, because I have really sensitive skin. I have a couple of nice chains to them, a nice pendant here, the compass, and I got some bracelets here, a gold and silver one. The bracelets and the quality of the jewelry overall is really good. And it's a really good price. And you can get even better price if you use my code FONZ, F-O-N-Z, for 25% off your order. And also you get some free shipping on top of that. What more can you ask for? I'm telling you guys, it's some good quality jewelry. I'm really into accessories. I'm into some jewelry. So you guys, if you want to check out Arichi London, go to arichilondon.com. Get yourself some high quality either chains, pendants, bracelets, or rings, right now. And use code FONZ, F-O-N-Z, for 25% off your order. Go do that right now. Number 5, Drake Maverick to SmackDown in 2019. 2016 was a great draft, but 2019 was also significant as well because SmackDown was moving to Fox and they wanted a brand new, fresh set of rosters. And this is a time where WWE was getting into a nice momentum here, especially with SmackDown going to Fox and moving to Friday nights. And there was a lot of good draft selections with the 2019 WWE draft. And there was a few that didn't pan out, and one of them is Drake Maverick. And honestly, it didn't make sense with him. He was a Night 2 supplemental draft pick that happened on the bump, and he was the 205 Live general manager at the time. And it didn't make sense because Maverick ended up having just one match on SmackDown, but at the same time, he was still GM of 205 Live. It really just made the draft pick completely pointless. He ended up finding his way back at NXT, but was released in 2020, rehired again late 2020, and then fired again in 2021. It was just a crazy time with that year, with the COVID year, with a bunch of releases from the company. Drake Maverick, great GM, great wrestler in WWE, but really just was a wasted draft pick. Because you want to have SmackDown with Fox, they want an exact set of rosters, but at the same time, he was still part of 205 Live. It just didn't really make sense because he actually was generally a very good manager with 205 Live, making it somewhat fun to watch. Number 4, the NWO to Raw in 2002. This was the first WWE roster split between Raw and SmackDown in 2002, and there was so much potential with so many wrestlers going to separate brands. And it started off really well. SmackDown had the first pick, they got The Rock. Undertaker went to Raw with their first pick, and then this is where it got a little bit strange with Raw's second pick. Because with the fourth pick, GM Vince McMahon selected the entire NWO. Well, NWO minus Hulk Hogan. It ended up being weird because all the tag teams that were in the draft pool ended up being drafted separately anyway. The Dudley Boys, APA, and even the Hardy Boys. Well, the Hardy Boys were technically drafted on the same show, but they were drafted in separate selections. Now, if this was in the 1990s, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and X-Pac would have been a great selection for Raw, but this was just really not a good selection. See, the Attitude Era, the Monday Night Wars, was really a thing of this past, and the WWE's version of NWO was very watered down. And in the ring, things just didn't work out. Scott Hall unfortunately had some real-life issues he had to deal with, ended up being released from the company. Kevin Nash was injured right away, but I give credit to X-Pac for trying to carry on the NWO stable, even adding the people like The Big Show, Booker T, and Shawn Michaels. And you'd think with even Shawn Michaels added to NWO would be a lot more popular, but just did not really pan out at all. To a group that was selected so high in the draft, did not pan out at all right away. It really was a bad draft pick. Number 3, Triple H to SmackDown in 2004. You see, Triple H in 2004, in the early 2000s, was in his reign of terror. With the long-haired Triple H with the big gold belt, he was atop of the Raw game. And after WrestleMania 20, losing the World Heavyweight Championship, he was drafted surprisingly with the 5th pick in the 2004 draft to SmackDown. Now, if you want a funny moment, check out the backstage segment of Triple H being drafted to SmackDown. He was shocked, much like Ric Flair and everybody else, and you see Kane laughing in the background. And at the time, SmackDown was considered the B-level show, and there was a lot of potential to have Triple H on the blue brand. There's a lot of potential matches he could have had. He ended up having a match with Eddie Guerrero for the WWE Championship on that night's episode of Raw, ended up losing a disqualification because of Christian's interference. But still, there were so many ideas for Triple H to be on the blue brand, to be on SmackDown, so many potential feuds he could have had, maybe even winning the WWE Championship. But didn't realize he ended up never competing on a match on SmackDown, ended up showing back on Raw because of a post-draft trade. And the trade is as follows. Raw got Triple H, A-Train and Chuck Palumbo, and SmackDown got Booker T, the Dudley Boys, Rico, and Miss Jackie. Really not the best of trades for SmackDown. It really made no sense. It was a waste of a draft pick. The 5th pick, there was so much potential seeing Triple H on SmackDown in 2004. It just didn't make sense. Why would you draft him to SmackDown in the first place if you knew he was never even going to compete on there? Number 2, the Boogeyman, the ECW in 2007. The 2007 draft was the first draft to include the WWE ECW brand. And while the Extreme brand debuted in 2006, they were only given 2 draft picks from Raw and SmackDown, but this was the first draft to include wrestlers from ECW to go to other brands. It was really a 3-brand draft. This was also the first time draft picks were determined by matches, meaning that if a SmackDown superstar ended up winning a match, SmackDown got a draft pick. And there were some pretty interesting draft picks to be going on there. Chris Benoit ended up moving to ECW at the time, is considered a new face of ECW, and we know what happened after that. Bobby Lashley ended up moving to Raw after his time in ECW, and the Great Khali was drafted to SmackDown. And we know the Great Khali, now you can say what you want about him, he ended up being World Heavyweight Champion within his first year on the blue brand. And then there was the Boogeyman being drafted to ECW. I never understood the Boogeyman's character. It freaked me out. It still freaks me out to this day. I don't know what the heck was going on with those worm things. I just didn't understand it at all. You see, ECW's network, the Sci-Fi Channel, wanted these kind of crazy, weird superstars. Hence why the Zombie was the first ever official wrestler to be in ECW. They wanted someone unique, and it was the Boogeyman. And Boogeyman ended up having a couple of matches on ECW, but it was against other wrestlers that just didn't know what to do with them. And that was the case with ECW at the time. It had a lot of potential in the first year in WWE, but after 2006, they just really didn't know what to do in the land of Extreme and just put a lot of wrestlers on SmackDown and Raw onto ECW to see if it would work. And honestly, it didn't really work. But still, Boogeyman taking 2nd overall in 2007 to ECW was not a good selection. Number 1, John Cena SmackDown in 2011. Now, I said in the last video, John Cena had the best WWE draft pick of all time going to Raw in 2005, but in this case, he's also the worst draft selection in WWE history. You see, Cena was drafted to the Raw in 2005 and was a mainstay on their main event level for all those years. And some thought maybe it's time for a little bit of a refresher. We had a great time on Raw, main eventer, WWE champion, and whatnot. Maybe it was time a little bit of a refresher, new feuds, new championship pursuits on the blue brand. And that was the case. He was drafted with the first pick in the 2011 WWE draft, and fans were very hyped about it. And you look at it, it could have been a chance to kind of revive the blue brand, to bring a superstar like Cena over there. The potential was through the roof with him. And this was the case also where the matches predetermined which brand got a draft pick, and John Cena was part of the main event here. Raw's team of The Miz, CM Punk, and Alberto Del Rio defeated Team SmackDown of John Cena, Christian, and Mark Henry. And Raw got a draft pick because of it. And guess who was Raw's final draft pick? That's right, John Cena ended up being drafted to Raw to end the episode that night. So we started off on SmackDown, and then to end off, went back to Raw. It just was so stupid and pointless to me. Now, if he never got drafted to Raw to end the episode, I don't even think this would have been on the list at all. Maybe it would have been one of the better draft picks. But to waste a first overall pick to go to SmackDown only to have him go back to Raw and never get drafted at all, it just made no sense. Plus, when it comes to drafting, when you get drafted once, you can't get drafted again the same night. It just doesn't make sense. You don't see it in the NFL, the NBA, even the MLB. It just was pointless. If he was going to be on Raw, then why be drafted to SmackDown in the first place and get the fans hopeful and excited for it? Still, a waste of a draft pick. Made no sense. And that is my Fonz's top 10 of the worst WWE draft picks of all time. Let me down below. Do you agree with the list? Am I missing some? Which one was the worst selection in your personal opinion? If you haven't already, definitely like this video, send this out to some friends, send it to a couple of friends. Subscribe and hit that bell. Check out my podcast on here, the Slickback Kickback Report. But if you like audio version, check it out wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Pandora even. Like I said, with this channel, it's going to be a grab bag of stuff. On Mondays or Fridays, you're going to get a non-podcast video. It could be a top 10 on wrestling. Could be a sports-related video. Who knows? But on Wednesdays, you're going to get the podcast on here, the Slickback Kickback Report, here and also wherever you get your podcasts. So that's at least 2 videos a week on here. And on top of some shorts I'll be posting throughout the week. But definitely subscribe to the channel. It definitely helps with the numbers. Hit 500 subscribers on this channel. I cannot thank you guys enough for that. If you like Jersey Talk, which I talk exclusively Jersey, check out my other channel, Fonz Talks Jerseys. We're doing really well over there also. You can follow my TikTok, Instagram, everything down below at Fonz DeFalco. Check out the links. It's right there, people. Check out the other sponsors on this here as well. Grateful Apparel, Arichi London Jewelry. Greatly appreciate all the love and support for that. With that, have a good day, good night, good evening, whenever you're watching said video, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace out.